Hi, Tyra Butler, early career clinician coach. So, you want to be able to create the career that you want, a kind of career that is fulfilling, that meets your needs, and that really sets you out on a path where you can become the kind of therapist that you want to be able to provide for a family, to be able to support yourself, and to create probably this dream and goal that you've had ever since you decided to go to grad school. You want to be able to fulfill that in a way that is meaningful for you and that meets all of your needs, income wise, and all the other facets of being a counselor or therapist. You want to be able to do therapy and counseling the way that you want to. You want to be able to put all these pieces together of being a provisionally licensed or pre-licensed therapist or counselor. It feels like there's a mountain sometimes to climb, just so many things to overcome and put together. It can be like putting puzzle pieces together, getting all the different types of hours that you have to get, and to be able to just survive financially and not get burned out along the way. So you want to have a career and a position where you can overcome all of that and stay on this path successfully. And you want to be able to see clients and do therapy the way that you want. And I promise you that if you thought about, oh my gosh, what if I could do private practice or get into a group practice where it's like being in a private practice, what if I could do that while I was pre-licensed? Well, I know that many of you have thought about that, and that many of you wish that could be the case for you, because I think most of us, when we think about being a therapist or doing counseling, sure, some of us, envision doing it in a community mental health agency or nonprofit and kind of putting in some of our time there and working with the underprivileged and whatnot. And I think that a lot of us envision being in a private practice type setting, working with clients one-on-one in our own office or like our own office, and being able to do therapy the way that we envision being able to do it, not the way an employer or a boss or supervisor is sort of enforcing upon us. So if you are thinking that you want to be able to do private or get into a group practice while you're provisionally or pre-licensed, it is possible. If it's legal and ethical in your state based on your licensure status, so if you're registered or you are provisionally licensed, whatever the title is for you, if it's legal and ethical in your state with that licensure status and title, then this is something that you can do. In a lot of states, we found out through a recent challenge and free training series that in a lot of the U.S. beautiful states, it is possible and legal and ethical to do so. So that's great news for you. Now, here's some of the obstacles. Okay, so you want this goal, you want to be able to do this, and it can be legal and ethical in a lot of the states. So assuming that it is legal and ethical, this is something that you want to be able to do. The obstacles come into play then of, okay, where do you start? Where do you find a site? Where do you find an office to be able to do this in? Where do you find a supervisor other than just asking around people that you know? What are the resources and the places that you can go to find a really good supervisor? How do you know if that is going to be a good supervisor or not? And then once you find someone who's willing and capable of doing that, what are the parameters for doing so? What do you need to be sure of? What do you need to negotiate? What do you need to be aware of when you walk into this situation and negotiate? How do you maximize how much you can earn based on getting into a private or group practice? How do you figure out what to even say in an interview? How do you even figure out how to get all your ducks in a row and be able to make this happen? How do you compete against many other probably pre-licensed and provisionally licensed therapists who want to be able to do the same thing when there's a limited amount of supervisors in your area? So these are some of the obstacles for finding a site and a supervisor. The next obstacle comes into play is, okay, if you can even figure all that out and find someone that's great as a supervisor, find a site, wonderful. Then what do you do about getting clients? How do you go about suddenly getting clients to call and email you? And how do you determine what you're responsible for versus what your supervisor is responsible for? How do you navigate and figure all that out? And if you are responsible for getting referrals and your supervisor's not going to provide them, then what? How do you get marketing going? What do you do for yourself when you have limited funds and capabilities to be able to get things going for yourself and get the calls and emails coming in? And then once you get those calls and emails coming in, those client referrals, then what? Then the next obstacle is, how do you get them to make an appointment with you? How do you get them to choose you? And then once they do, if they do, then what do you do about the first session? How do you navigate that? How do you do the informed consent with them? How do you talk with them? Do you just listen? Do you ask questions? Do you do an assessment? How does it work best to be able to kind of win that client over, or ensure that they're the best fit for you, and ensure that if they'll be able to come back, and if they will come back, and if they'll decide that? Because you're working with people in private practice that are there on their own accord, by their own will, which is a blessing beyond belief, because you're not working with court-ordered people or people that are kind of just have to be there. They're actually seeking you out and wanting to be there with you. So how do you finesse that first session? What do you say, and what kind of conversations do you have so that they'll be apt to want to come back and see you a second and third time? And how do you create a foundation where they want to continue to see you going forward so that you can build your practice? So these are some things that I was able to accomplish for myself. I was able to start in a private practice right after I graduated and got my registration number as a registered marriage and family therapist intern. And I came up against some real obstacles. I came right away, even though I was grateful and blessed that I had the capability of being able to start out in a private practice right away, I came up against some obstacles. Against the first site that I went to, and discovered how the operations were ran, and I didn't feel that some things were fair. And then I came up against, then they weren't providing referrals, and I had to figure out how to get referrals for myself. It was like sink or swim. I had to suddenly figure out what to do that would work. And so after going through some trial and error and lots of headaches and long nights, I figured out what worked, and I consulted with some therapy business coaches and got some really great training, both on the business side and clinically. And together, by getting better clinically and getting some great training and getting some great coaching business-wise, I was able to merge the two and start to get client referrals. My phone started ringing more, I started getting emails more, and then I, over time, created a system for how to assess whether it was a good client, ideal client for me, and then once even meeting with them in person, created a system for how to make that first session flow optimally and increase the chances of them, staying with me and it being a great fit for both me and the client, and hopefully staying with me longer. So I really, over facing these obstacles along the way and finding a site and supervisor that was a good fit for me, I found a couple supervisors that weren't so great for me. And so by doing so, I actually learned how to figure out how to find the ideal one for me, because during my last 3 years of pre-licensure, I found a great supervisor, and I was able to negotiate a great arrangement, and I figured out how to be able to do this and help you be able to do the same. And so I created systems, and I created this training to be able to help you be able to do the same exact thing. So I've also been teaching other people this, and it works. These systems and these approaches work, and I'm so excited to be able to bring this right to you. So stay tuned. On next video, I'm going to go into a little bit more about the systems that I have, the 5-step process that I can take you through on how to start and grow your pre-license practice to hit the ground running, a step-by-step guide. So the step-by-step guide is going to take you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 simple steps that I have created based on deconstructing and talking through with the people that I've worked with and looking back on my early part of my career and figuring out what works and putting it together in a very succinct, systemized way that you can then take it and run with it and use it for yourself. So I'll talk to you guys soon. Thank you for listening.